Gregg Berhalter, as you mentioned earlier, Charlie, really pressed all the right buttons, tactically pretty spot on. I've really liked our team shape, the spacing between the lines. We haven't been too deep. We haven't been too high. I really like where they are with this particular movement. And when we press, we're pressing with really good purpose. It's not like we're going in ones and twos and trying to defend in ones and twos. We're defending as a group, and that's important. Now, Tata Martino struggling in Mexico. There were a lot of cries for Tata to at least get interviewed by the U.S. men's national team, but it's looking like, based on how he's performing as manager of Mexico, who barely got by Honduras 1-0 away from home. We'll break down that game after the break. But do you feel like Gregg Berhalter, after what we've seen so far, we're on the precipice, 99% chance of qualifying for the World Cup automatically? Do you think he's been the right guy to lead us?
My answer would be yes.
Okay.
Because if you decide as a national team coach to go in a certain direction, which he did, which is basically hit the restart button and start fresh and basically have a group that you can groom through one World Cup qualifying cycle that you expect to qualify for. But I think with the end goal being, hey, we're going to come to try and win in 2026, then this is exactly what you, I think, would have hoped for. Yes, I guess finishing top of the group would have been ideal, but we knew this was going to be much tougher than I think everyone thought, just because none of them had experience in World Cup qualifying. It's different. You can play Champions League. You can play for all these biggest clubs. It's much different playing in Azteca and going to El Salvador and going to Honduras, like you guys know. So for me, Berhalter, yes, there's been some questionable decisions, right? And tactically. But in the end, when it counted, when it mattered the most, he got all those decisions right.
Okay, so Heath, same question to you, but I'm going to add a wrinkle to it. It seems like not only have the players evolved and matured through this World Cup qualifying phase, but it seems like Gregg has as well. Almost, we could argue, getting out of his way. Like sometimes I feel like he was in Pep Guardiola over tinkering territory, where he was trying to do too much or was too stubborn to call in different people. But we have one of the youngest national teams we've ever had, and he's got the group right where we need to be and confident at exactly the right time as we look to qualify. Now, of course, this is the mere expectation. Like, we expect you to qualify, and we're going to ultimately judge you on what you do in the World Cup. But because we failed to qualify last time around, maybe the bar is a little bit lower. What are your thoughts on this Gregg Berhalter, Tata Martino talk?
Yeah, I mean, you look at this qualifying campaign, and they're not there yet. Yes, they're essentially there. But he's used, what is the correct number? It's 30. What's the number he's used of players in this qualifying campaign?
You tell us. You're looking at the screen.
38 players. Yeah, I see it here now. He's used 38 different players, and only Honduras has used more players in qualifying. And yes, we are highly critical, mostly because of the fact of how many players he was changing in those early games, of just like the continuity that you're trying to build. But now when you look back at it, we're on the verge of qualifying. The team is still very young, but it's a hell of a lot more experience than they were when we came into this. So there is short-term objectives being achieved with long-term objectives as well. And I think that's a sign of a good manager, right? Managing today while trying to manage tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And while I still am kind of questionable about some of those early days of just sweeping 6-7 changes in a starting lineup, we were able to get out of those with points. If you look at how well the U.S. has done in terms of losing games and qualifying, we're still very good. We haven't played beautifully, but we've gotten players more experienced. The only criticism I would continue to have is that the way they played today wasn't beautiful. And I think we have enough quality to play a little more beautifully, to have a little more flow, to dictate the play a little more, to demand a little more from our players, to have a rhythm together and a style of play that we should start to establish for our U.S. national team, because we have so much young talent. Now's the right time to start shaping this style of play, this philosophy. Maybe he's doing that, and it takes more than just qualifying or games of consequence to do that. It takes years and years and years to get to the way that, and I don't want to say Spain or whatever, but you can see a philosophy of the way national teams play around the world. I think we now have enough quality, and we're getting players at a young enough age into the national team from the youth systems into the first team to have something there, that like a system of play or a culture of like philosophical football.
What I think is interesting is that we are now 27 minutes into this podcast, and not once have we talked about missing Weston McKennie, Serginho Dest, Brendan Aronson. We obviously talked about Yedlin and Weah being out because they were part of the Mexico game and they missed this one. So they were real options. I mean, we are now also demonstrating that we have a lot of depth And that really speaks to the ideology and culture that Gregg has set, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, in the early stages when you're rotating all these guys in and out, and some of them don't take their chances and look a little bit out of place / not up for the pace of this international game. Sometimes it's frustrating to watch because you're saying the answer is right there. You don't have to tinker here, but that was all part of him growing and maturing as a national team coach, right? So he had to, I think, learn from his mistakes, which I think he's done. That's the important thing, is we're not repeating mistakes here. We know, I think we basically had a good understanding of 9 positions, 9 starters on this group. I think the number 9, we're not going to know who the number 9 is for this team probably until the World Cup camp, because I will give it a whole nother spring to see if there's another player that comes out of the woodwork. If
Ricardo Pepi, please leave Augsburg and go somewhere better. Sorry, I just had to say a quick little.
He should have gone to Wolfsburg, man. Anyway, keep going, Charlie.
It could be a DK emerges and starts like maturing and becoming a top striker. If Ricardo Pepi gets going, it's going to be hard for Jordan Pefok to get going again, because I've been there as a striker. You get your chance. You've been waiting forever. You're scoring goals in your club. You get your opportunity and you flub it. He's probably feeling rock bottom right now, 0 confidence. So now it's, what kind of character and mentality does he have? What are the people that are around him to kind of try and pick him up? It's going to be really important to see how he reacts from this low point. Maybe it's some minutes against Costa Rica.
Do you feel like Jordan Pefok, Charlie, I'll come back to you on this, needs to go somewhere else from young boys? Like, he's already proven what he can do in the Swiss League and now has to make a move over the summer. I think that's what's interesting about this World Cup, is that we might have a lot of players moving from their current clubs over the summer to go somewhere new, which could be good and maybe not so good, because if they don't really find their footing with a new coach, maybe they're out of favor and that hurts their form heading into a World Cup.
Charlie, you moved a year before the World Cup, right? You moved summer of 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel that was the right amount of time for you to sort of, it was a risk, right? You were running a risk. You were in peak form, but you were going to a bigger club, tougher environment, running the risk of losing your spot by just not playing minutes. You're paid to score goals. You don't do that, find yourself on the bench, you can find yourself out of the conversation for the World Cup team.
I think every player has a understanding of where they are, right? And I think the confidence level for me after Confederations Cup, I felt like I could play against anyone, any league, anywhere. And the next step for me, that wasn't going from the Swedish Allsvenskan League and being a top scorer there to jumping already to the Premier League and Champions League or something, was playing in Liga on a mid-table team. That for me was the right step, because it wasn't a team that's going to have to fight relegation. It was a team where, I had a conversation with the manager and the sporting director, and it was, we believe in you. You're going to get opportunities to play. And so I think when you're looking at Ricardo Pepi's move, it's Bundesliga and directly into the relegation fight, where if you don't perform or train well, which from what I understand, he's not the best, hasn't had the best of trainings with the U.S. men's national team. Sometimes that affects your I guess your psyche, because all of a sudden you're put in a position where you're not guaranteed to play, no matter how much money you were bought for or how much money you make on that team. And so that can kind of set someone back and kind of have them spiraling. For me, I think I was ready for that next step. And I came into a team where I had to, I guess, start on the bench. And I came off the bench the first game. Then the second game, he came off the bench at halftime, and I scored a brace against the league champions.
Ooh, must be nice, Charlie.
Yeah, flex. It only took 31 minutes. 31-minute flex. We appreciate you, Charlie, because we like to flex all the time.
Yeah.
And
hey,
you
Jimmy,
beat us to it this time. Yes,
hey, I will say this. I do think Pefok, if he wants to go to the World Cup, has to move to earn the respect at the club level, because we got 27 in camp right now. 23 are on the plane to the World Cup. And that's not including the Weston McKennie, Serginho Dest, any other players that could emerge in the next 12 months. We're looking at Luca De La Torre. He's emerged in the last few months. Walker Zimmerman in the last 5 months, I guess, from summer. Yeah. Like, we're seeing Aaron Long coming back. There's a number of guys. Like, this is a big pool of players. There's going to be a lot of unhappy people. And there's going to, I think, still be a couple people that we're going to be shocked with that get left off the team just because there's no room. And you're going to understand the argument. But yeah, he's going to have to move
after Landon Donovan got left off the roster in 2014. Nothing
by a guy who
anymore.
Yeah, but by a guy who scored with his first touch in the World Cup. What can you say?
All right.
Julian Green, first touch in the World Cup goal.